Welcome to Saltgrass, a show about how local communities can engage with the climate crisis at a grassroots level. My name is Ali Hanley. In this episode, we're talking about the Castlemaine Seed Library, located within the Castlemaine Public Library. To talk about this, I'm joined by Grace McCaughy and Eliza Jane Gilchrist, who met with me just around the corner from the library at the community garden at Castlemaine Community House. The community garden has been looking very lush and productive lately and is usually a little peaceful oasis in the middle of the township of Castlemaine. And it's a nice place to sit and have lunch or meet with someone. And I thought it would be a lovely setting for our chat. However, our local council has been facilitating live outdoor events as a COVID-safe way to support our musicians and let people hear live music again, which had been very much missed throughout all the lockdowns. So they created a pop-up stage about a block away, and as you'll hear, the usual serenity of the community gardens was interrupted as bands were doing sound checks. So you will hear a bit of that in the background. It was a lovely discussion with Grace and Eliza, and we discussed how the Seed Library began, how it works, as well as big ideas like the value of local seed banks in a changing climate, multinational seed trade, edible weeds and flowers, the resonances between seed collecting and art, and how we can foster a love of gardening and all of the cycles of nature with our next generation of children. As ever, before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that this episode was recorded and produced on Jara country. This is the acknowledgement of country that the Seed Library has on their website, and I liked it, so I'm going to read it out to you. Castlemaine Seed Library acknowledges the local Djadjalrung people as the first inhabitants and the original farmers, gardeners and custodians of the Loddon River lands, where our members live, work, plant, grow and save seeds. We recognise their continuing connection to this land, rivers and creeks, and to their rich ancient culture. We acknowledge that at the time of European arrival, the totality of the lands that are now known as Victoria were occupied by sovereign Indigenous nations who owned, cared for and enjoyed their land in accordance with their laws, customs and traditions. We acknowledge with full respect the strength and power of all traditional owners, elders, ancestors and young leaders who fight to protect and look after country, community, language and law in the face of ongoing colonial interruptions and cultural genocide.
Salt of the earth. Salt. Grassroots. Salt of the earth people. Grassroots change. Saltgrass.
Listen to all episodes of Saltgrass on your podcast app or at saltgrasspodcast.com. I thought I would share with you my first experience of using the library. I walked into the public library and went up to the counter to speak with one of the friendly faces there. It was local library legend, Jules, and she was happy to show me the ropes of the Seed Library and talk about what it's been like to have a seed library within the public library. So how do I go about borrowing some seeds from the Seed Library?
Come over here. So these are the seeds here, so you can take 3 at a time. So I'll let you choose 3 and then come up to the counter and then we just record them.
Great.
So we take a few details and we can go through that when you come up to the counter if you want.
Cool. Lettuce. Amaranth.
I do love
Dill. All right. So I got corn, coloured variety, mustard, wasabi and lettuce mixture and some hollyhocks just to...
Yes, a bonus. All right, so I give you this little borrowing slip. Okay. I'll let you fill in your info. So we just take a few details for the seed library. If you are able to collect any seeds from these, it would be great if you could bring these varieties back. But if not, you can just bring in some other seeds that you've collected.
Okay, cool. Do you know if you've had fenugreek before?
Yes, I think we have.
Because I've got some of those.
Yeah, awesome. Bring it in. They'll love that. For us, it's pretty easy. We don't have to do much. It's really good bang for buck for us because they run the whole thing.
Yeah, great.
So all we have to do is this part of it, which is checking out the seeds.
Yeah.
And then people bring back some seeds and then we put them in that container over there. Yeah. And the seed library crew come in and repackage them up into these bags. So that's basically all we have to do.
Yeah. And have you noticed people noticing it and then wanting to talk about it?
People definitely have noticed that hollyhocks sculpture.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. So that's been great. But yes, people definitely have noticed it. And when we were closed for lockdowns, people wanted access to the seeds. So when we were sort of just open for click and collect in the foyer, we put some seeds out in the foyer so people could still access it.
Yeah.
People do want to talk about it, to know about it, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Grace, how did you come up with the idea of the seed library?
Well, actually, I can't remember how I came up with the idea, but I checked up and found that there were very few in Australia. One up in Rockhampton, I think it was, and I contacted them, and the guy there was very, very helpful, sent me a lot of information and so on. But theirs is very small. It involves really a drawer just full of packets of seeds that people bring, and they go straight in the drawer. There's no processing like we do here. Anyway, I had the idea and I approached Heather at the hub plot, and she said, "Oh, Grace, we have so much on, you know, we're not about to take on anything else." I said, "Look, I don't need any help of any kind apart from just that you will support the idea, or perhaps even, you know, have it on their webpage or something like that." So I decided not to bother trying to get funds or anything. I thought, look, I want this to happen, so I'll just do it. So I just went ahead and started working out what I needed, and there's a long list of things. We needed a board, and we needed seeds, and we needed packets. So I looked at all those things, and I went to the tip shop, and I found, you wouldn't believe how lucky one can be, I found this ABC board that had been used for displaying and selling CDs, I presume. And that's it, that's half of it. So I got a guy, through Heather, to cut it in half and put the lovely shaped end on and fit it. And then I had to work out how to get little hooks that would go on. So I designed a little hook, which is those ones, there's 20 of them. And Jamie Barrett from See It Design, he made them for me. Charged me $1 each, $25. Then I got another guy, through the hub plot, Mr. Mears from Guildford, he's an engineer, to hang it, to install it on the wall. So there are actually 9 different people involved in doing various things to get the library off of it, to get it going, you know.
Wow. So explain to listeners exactly what the process is. What can people do with the seed library?
Okay. Well, the seed library is about getting seeds out to people free of charge. So they borrow seeds, just like you borrow a book, and you just bring the book back. But with the seeds, you actually grow them, let some of them go up to seed, collect those seeds and bring them back. So that's how it's called a library. And Eliza, you'll be able to tell us how many seed packets we've given out. And it's been going about 5 years. It was October 5 years ago.
I got the figures. So we had a running total from 2020. So in 2020, there were 746 borrowed. And in this year, 892 have been borrowed. I think it's really gone up because of COVID.
I remember you giving a total of about
yes.
6,500.
I did to Eve that time, didn't
over a period of about 5 years,
5 years,
I think.
yeah.
6,500 packets to 500 different borrowers. And
Yeah.
I've had one person whom I know come up to me in the street several years ago and say, "Grace, I've never grown my own vegetables." And I thought, I'll have a go, seeing as I can get a packet of seeds for nothing. And she said, "I'm growing my own food, I'm picking stuff." And she was so thrilled to bits. So I think that quite a few people are new to gardening.
So we have a lot who are new. I think you're right.
Yeah.
But it's a really no risk starting place, isn't
Of
it?
course.
Because it's not a big investment.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think that's one of our key strengths.
Yeah.
That people can just
Yeah.
give it a go.
And of course, when new seeds come in that we haven't already got, we have some volunteers who research that, and we have found one really good site, an American site, with all the information on, because we put on the seed packets, you see.
So much information. Here's one, Grace.
Yeah, such a lot of information. The information about it, the growing tips, it has position, full sun, sow in which season, the width of rows, the spacing of plants, the depth of the seed, and the pH of the soil. So all of that needs to be researched, of course, and that is done, and that's put on a document, and then it's taken to someone else, another volunteer, who actually puts it into this format to go. And these come on pages, and our working bees are about cutting up the information to fit the seed packets, and then someone else sticks them on, one for the back and one for the front, and then another little thing goes inside about collecting, thank you for borrowing and donating local seeds. If you have a good harvest, return a larger quantity. And so that's about the information, how to do it. So initially I spent about $179 buying seeds from the lost seeds. I researched seed companies and found the lost seed in northern New South Wales. And they have a lovely philosophy, which is fantastic. And I thought, wow, that sounds like me, you know. So I ordered seeds through them. And the value of their seeds was that in their packets, they have a lot of seeds. So we were able to divide them. And we wanted enough just for a person. Like, you don't want 25 butternut pumpkins or 25 of almost anything. So we divided them up, and we were able to multiply our number of seed packets that we put on the board. So a young woman turned up at the hub plot one Monday morning, and I talked to strangers, you see. So we started chatting, and I thought, gee, this young woman sounds interesting. She was married but had no children, and she wasn't working because she wasn't all that well. And so I said to her, what are you doing after this? Come for lunch. And by the finish of lunch, she was the coordinator of the seed library. Okay?
That was Dana. She was the
Dana.
first one.
Yeah. So Dana was wonderful.
Morrissey,
Dana, she's a graphic designer. So she actually designed our label, and she designed that poster that you got a photograph just recently, and she had a big poster that we put out on our working bee days. She did all of that, and she did the layout for the labels.
She's just made our website.
And she's just been funded by the Shire, is that right, to do our new website, which has actually gone online.
Yep.
Just gone online, and it's wonderful. And
very lovely.
For anyone listening out there, go on that website and look at, what is it with all the external sites of interest or something? Links. The links are unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a good website.
Yeah.
It's great. When you first started, did you find you had to explain a lot to people, or did you get a lot of interest straight away? What was the public response initially?
Well, I'm not sure. I think Dana did a lot of the communication stuff. So we sent information out to the hub plot people and to the community garden people, the community house, Growing Abundance, and quite a few others. And then we also produced a little leaflet, I think, just a third of a trifold, double-sided, at the library, so people could take those away. There were 100 of those that were picked up. And so one way and another, it just started multiplying. And then people told other people, and so it's just snowballed, really. Firstly, you have to be a member of the library to join the seed, right? So they got a few new library members. Secondly, when they borrow only 3 packets per season, per person, per family. So they record that. The library has a book where they record them. I think that was it, that the folder was on the front there. So we record that. That's one thing. The other thing that happens, I'm not sure why this has changed. We used to have a box at the side of the seed library with a slot in it for returned seeds to go in there. But now returned seeds go to the library front desk, and the people have their names and details on that already. So,
Well, I'll tell you why that was changed. Was because I had a few seed packs that were kind of mysterious seeds. One of them in particular was called honey peas, and I'm like, ooh, honey peas, they sound good. But when I was Googling honey peas, I couldn't find any information, and it's really hard to put the seeds out if you don't know what they are, because people want to grow what they think that they're growing. So I made up a little donation slip as well as the borrower's slip in a similar way, so that the idea is that if people give me a contact and I don't know what the seed is or what you do with it or when you plant it, then I can get in touch with them and get a few more details.
That's clever.
And build up as well. Build up our database of donors, people who are going to give us seed. Just kind of pull the threads together a bit.
And is there any risk in terms of diseases that can come through seeds into people's gardens, like from one garden to another through the seeds? Is that a consideration?
Well, we haven't actually considered that, but certainly we make sure the seeds look good. First of all, the seeds are all local, and that's part of the advantage of a seed library, is that we build up a massive amount of seeds that are held in hundreds of people's gardens that are adapted to the local conditions. And there's probably less chance of disease coming in because of that. So I haven't had any reports of anyone having any disease problems or anything like that particularly, unless you may have.
I haven't had any feedback like that, but I have had people sometimes being concerned about if something is a weed, is considered to be a weed,
Oh, yes.
which I think is a bit, there's some justification in that concern, because some plants, even if they are edible, plants, they make millions of seeds and they're very well adapted to floating around everywhere. So yeah, people have to be a bit careful. I think that's an issue that we all have to think about in our gardens, and yeah, just where the seeds are going and how they're spreading. And I think we all have a responsibility to be informed about that.
Yeah, I think one classic example is one right in front of us here, that big tall plant. It's 2.5 meters tall with the yellow seeds at the moment. That's fennel. Fennel produces, there's probably, 100,000 seeds on that one plant, and a lot of them will end up various places. They'll come up all over the place here, and in fact they'll come up, you may have seen this growing along the roadside, so it's a very weedy thing, so that you have to make sure you collect those seeds at the right time, and the ones you don't use, dispose of.
Tastes great
whatever.
though. I love fennel.
Of course. India, they have a little fennel thing on every cafe table. Fennel seeds.
Yeah, nice.
For chewing after you eat. They clean your teeth, you see. So.
Oh yeah, that's great.
They help with digestion too, apparently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
digestive, yeah.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the more successful the plant, the more it's likely to be called a weed.
Yes, that's quite true. But the other thing about weeds is we're becoming more knowledgeable about weeds. And so, for example, dandelions and some of the others, milkweed and various things, are actually edible, and they're very good for your health. And a lot of them are loaded with vitamins and minerals. So we're getting to the stage where we eat more weeds, which is... They're easy to grow usually, so...
Yeah, because that's right, they're very easy to grow, yeah.
Yeah.
We're not quite doing dandelion seeds at the seed library yet.
No, you got to be careful. Yeah, I work in a tea place and we sell all sorts of weeds in there. We sell St John's wort, which is considered a noxious weed.
Yeah.
And it's a bright yellow. You see fields of it across Mount Tarrangower and Leanganuk. But it's very good for you in some contexts. You got to be careful how you take it.
Yes.
But there's a lot of things like, as you said, dandelion, nettle, all these things.
Yeah.
Nettles are lovely, stir-fried with garlic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Right.
And like you say, so easy to grow. They just grow themselves, in fact.
They just come up.
Yeah.
Really amazed me about flowers. How much tougher, because this is my first year growing flowers, how much tougher flowers are than vegetables.
Yes.
Like vegetables need so much cosseting compared to flowers. And somehow, because flowers are often very kind of frilly and delicate, you think, they're the ones that need looking after.
Yeah.
But tough as
They're
anything, yeah.
Yeah, they're tough. And they grow very easily. And those flowers, of course, are edible as well.
Yeah, some of them are, yeah.
In fact, my neighbour just told me a few weeks back, I have a big begonia covered in red flowers, and said, you can eat them, and we tasted them, and they are so beautiful, very tart, wonderful in salads, begonia flowers.
Brilliant.
So I'm all for weeds and flowers in vegetable gardens, and eat some of them as well.
Yeah, and my bees love the dandelions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, very happy with the weeds in my garden.
I had a housemate plant a bunch of calendula flowers, which are very good companion plants for a lot of vegetables. And they're beautiful in salads. It just adds this gorgeous orange sort of scattering through a green salad.
Look, the other thing, if I could say something about seeds, every single human being on earth eats seeds every day, either directly or indirectly. Even babies drink mother's milk, and the mother's milk has come from a mother who ate seeds that day, So they're pretty important.
Yeah. Do you want to clarify what you mean by that in terms of, I'm assuming you mean most people are eating wheat or oats or...
grain.
Oats, seeds,
Which is seeds,
linseeds, flax seeds, papita seeds, sunflower seeds, and all the grains, rice seeds. So everything.
Yeah.
And then following on from that, the sad thing is that the vast majority of seeds around the world are sold by, I think it's 3 major seed companies, huge seed companies. And also, vast majority of those are patented, but they're crossbreds as well, and they don't breed true.
Yeah.
So when you buy
Hybrids.
F1 generation or modified seeds at your nursery, or even seedlings from those seeds, the seeds from those won't breed true.
Necessarily. Sometimes they do, but they don't have to.
No,
Yeah,
they don't. Generally, they don't, but they don't always, as you say.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do. Yeah, you could be lucky, but
you can't guarantee it.
So what seed libraries do all around the world, and seed banks and that sort of thing, they do keep these old seeds pure and unpollinated, not crossed, so they will breed true. And
in
that's
the
pretty
hands
important.
of the people.
In the hands of the people. It's the people.
In the
who
gardens
will-
of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, the politics of it are great, actually.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I know that Grace is very political.
I really value that you brought that up because it's such an important issue, especially when companies are starting to copyright or patent seeds, which should be just common, like everyone should be able to access the next generation of life.
That's right. Because also, where did they come from? They came from the earth.
Yeah.
How can you say, I own this? That's
Yeah.
absurd.
And creating seeds that don't
Reproduce.
Yeah.
That's very cynical. I don't like that.
Most of the old seeds are in the hands of indigenous and native peoples all around the world, and small family farmers. Now, I belong to La Via Campesina, which represents 200 million peasant farmers around the world in 100 and something countries. They're based in Zimbabwe at the moment, but next year it's going to be based in Sweden, apparently. And reading their newsletter once a month, I have read one thing that has stuck in my mind, and this comes from the United Nations, and that is that 70% of the world's food is grown by indigenous people, native people, small family farms, using about 30% or less of resources. The other 30% is produced by agribusiness, big agribusiness, which uses so many resources, so many inputs, fertilizers, what have you,
And
the whole
fossil
lot.
fuel dependent.
Fossil fuel dependent, plus they're all grown on big farms, centralized in various places,
Monoculture, yeah.
and stuff has to transported thousands of kilometers to its destination. Seed libraries and native people feed their local villages. A seed library feeds the people around Castlemaine, this one, and so the food doesn't travel, and this is where it saves so much fossil fuels.
We talked as well about how during the pandemic a lot of issues were around food security. People ought to be able to, the supermarket shelves being empty. So great to know that you can just grow your own food, go to your back garden. And we're in the country, so most people do have a back garden. You can feed your family, and it's organic food as well, so which often is a bit expensive. So
It's expensive, but it's not any more expensive to grow.
That's exactly so. Yeah, exactly.
In fact,
so.
it's cheaper without all those fertilizers and sprays, So.
and we don't want that stuff anyway. You can pick the caterpillars off.
Yeah.
And as well, so good for you mentally to be working in your garden. So it was a real great upsurge in gardening for the last couple of years. We've seen it here with the Seed Library.
Yeah. And interestingly, one point, I read one report on that by Sustain, and it said that the biggest age cohort of new uptake of gardening during COVID was in the 18 to 24 age group, which I found absolutely interesting and wonderful.
It is wonderful.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of a local food resilience
Next generation.
gardening as resistance kind of stuff that we really want to see the young kids getting stuck into and feeling really great about that.
We've had to accept enormous change in the last 2 years. I think it's been a big lesson for a lot of people, and a lot of people have found that they're actually happier with less, having less than what they've had in the past. And I hope that grows and grows, because that's where it all is.
I'll ask you, Eliza, what your role is now and why you've decided to come on board.
Now I am the coordinator. Dana Morrissey was the first coordinator. Then after Dana had a baby, beautiful little Ruby. And then Susan took over, Susan Keller. And then Susan became unwell, and then I took over about a year ago from Susan. And the reason was, I'm an artist, so the reason was during COVID a lot of my work dried up, so I had a lot more time on my hands. So I emailed the Seed Library and said, I can give you a hand if you like. And everyone was so busy that they didn't get back to me. So I thought, this organisation's they're quite stretched. So I thought, okay, well, I can help here. I love the idea of the Seed Library. I was a working bee volunteer because as an artist, you get very used to looking for opportunities and being opportunistic. And of course, seeds is a great opportunity for sharing and generosity and getting something for nothing, which is something I'm very keen on.
So you turned up at a working bee.
So there was a few working bees. So I was on the list. So I had met Susan and I'd met Dana too, and I think I'd probably met you. But anyway, that's how I began. I suggested that we put in a grant to the local council to get more people, just kind of consolidate the amount of people, because there's lots of people who are involved in the Seed Library in some way, even if it's just borrowing the seeds, donating seeds, coming to a working bee. There's loads of people who are participating, but to consolidate the group somewhat so that if someone did become ill, then there would be other people who could kind of step in. So we put in a grant to have a website. We were linked with Growing Abundance, which was great, and we were a page on their website, we were a page on the library's website, and we were a page on the Hub Plots website. But I thought it'd be really great if we had our own website, and so we put in a grant to do that. And then as a fundraising and a kind of community building exercise, we asked for some funds to help us run a seedling sale, because of course we've got the seeds. We thought we can grow seedling. We've got the expertise. We've got some amazing, this is one of them, we've got some amazing gardeners in the organisation. So we decided to have a seedling sale as a fundraiser, and which we did in September, didn't we? October. It was the 5th birthday. It was our little 5th birthday.
Yes.
And that's what Dana made the website for. So we actually were able to train up Dana. So we got the funds. We were able to train up Dana to learn how to do that, which is great, to be able to train your volunteers. It's a really lovely thing. And she made the most gorgeous website for us, and we had all these growers growing seedlings. That was the best fun, wasn't it? Just some people just went crazy. There were so many seedlings. It was
raised over
because we thought, $1,000, and because I had just assumed, I didn't want to pressure anyone, so I just thought we'll just get lots of people and they just could grow like maybe 10 little punnets of something, something small. And there were people coming with ute loads of seedlings. It was wild. It was.
My car was stacked two tiers at the
there were 2 tiers of your son's ute.
Oh yes, it was that. We had to bring the big ute. Yes.
Yeah. And it was great fun, and people were really, we were at Wesley Hill Market, people were really supportive, and all joined in, and there was such a variety of stuff. Yeah, that was really good fun.
It was a great sort of capacity building exercise as well. I think you probably have a really good lot of people there to draw from for volunteers, for
doing
whatever
stuff
you want to do.
Yes, so it was really useful from that point of view. I do feel like there's a team kind of, emerging from there.
Yeah.
People to take on roles, doing the labels. We've got people doing the labels for us, doing the research for us. Yeah.
you obviously need little envelopes and you need to print things and stick things. And how did you fund all of that from the start?
Oh, well, look, I funded myself happily the start of it. And then I can't remember where the next lot of funding came, but I think we sold a harp.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we sold a harp for $600, which I had made.
You made a harp?
I made a harp, yeah, with Andy and James Rigby, the brothers. And in fact, we made two. My partner made one as well. Anyway, the harp was, we put it in the library and put it on the market, and the guy who helped me make it, or who ran the workshop where I made it, Andy, bought it. Bought it back. So it was well made.
And he knew it.
Yeah, he knew,
yeah,
he knew very well.
Yeah.
And so there was initial outlay for seeds as well, but is it now self-sustaining in terms of seeds?
Yes, it is, but that also gives us some. There's a lovely serendipity about that, about not knowing what you're going to get. So it's a bit like Christmas when you go in and see what people have left you.
Yeah.
But there's some kind of downsides of it as well, in that, for example, you will get to September and you don't have lots of tomato seeds, and you really want lots of tomato seeds because everyone wants to plant their tomatoes. So there's a bit of demand, and sort of the donating side of it, I would like to get a little bit more figured out. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is consolidating our links with community gardens so that we can get them to be our chief donators. And there's a bit of coordination needed with that, but you know, for example, this garden could give us the fennel seeds for starters. They do, I mean, they do donate, but you know, we could sort of say, look, we'd really like you to supply us with tomatoes, but it's great when we've got some astonishingly generous individual donors. I tell you, a great donor gave us a whole bunch of seeds. Is a chap in Bendigo called Greg, who has a company called Useful Seeds, and he sells the seeds, but he does lots of seed trials. So he donated heaps of seeds to the seed library that were his trials, that were still good, but they weren't the kind of the one that he selected. So he's really into the diversity of
and genetics.
And the genetics of the seeds. So they are hybrids, but he's breeding for specific characteristics that are going to succeed, that are going to be fail-safe in this climate. So for example, he breeds all these melons and has these trials and selects the best ones, and so then he has lots of seeds as a consequence of this, because he's always selecting the best ones that he's going to grow on from. And he very generously donated heaps of seeds to us from his trials. So we get some really unusual things in the seed library. We were talking, weren't we, about how there were something like 20 different varieties of seeds on the seed library of, you know, Malabar spinach, 3 types of beans, you know, several types of...
This is just each season as well. That's another thing, by the way. The seed is available, and we change it at the time when people would normally be planting for the spring or the summer or the winter.
That's right. So what you find on the board you can put in, but you might need to, for example, the tomatoes were there in September, but of course they won't grow in the ground in September. We do a newsletter. That's the other thing that we funded with our grant, is I've been doing a newsletter once a month, and in that we talk about what's on the board, what people are doing in their gardens that month. And so it is, if you are a new grower, you do join up to the mailing list, and you can get practical information to help you, you know, learning from other gardeners, because they're really such a generous bunch of people with knowledge. And I always encourage people, if they're new, to come to the Working Bee, because there are some amazing volunteers there. They just sit and pack seeds and talk about what they're trying and what's growing, what's going well, what's not worth trying, what's not worth bothering with. And
it's a great learning experience, those Working Bees. I learn something every time. And also talk about your interviews. You do an interview once a month with the gardener. I
do, yes, I do my little segment. It's my favourite thing. It's called A Walk Around the Garden with whoever I'm walking around the garden with. And in the newsletter, and I go to their garden and they walk me around their garden and they tell me all the things that they love about it and what's in the ground, what they're trying. So there's lots of really practical information there, and I take photos, and then I sort of put it in as a little segment in the newsletter. And it's a really lovely thing to do, and people
love it.
Yeah, and there was one, when it was spring, I went to the community garden with Annalise, who's one of our volunteers at the Working Bee. She's got a little tiny gardener called Oscar, who's 4. And he was telling me all about his patch and what he's growing and was this growing, pulling things out, and he was hilarious.
Oscar's lovely. In fact, Oscar inspired me to do something. I was chatting to Oscar one day and asked him what he was growing in his garden, and he told me about all these things, primulas and everything, and I said, what colour primulas? Oh, orange, red, all sorts of colours, even black, you know, and I said, oh, that's wonderful, Oscar, you know. And I was so inspired that I started looking at what can be done or what is available for children and gardening. And I discovered quite a lot. I discovered, for example, that CSIRO produced a book. I should have brought a copy with me. I have a rather nice book on soil science for children. And it's got some beautiful original drawings and a good language suitable for children. And I have this vision, in fact I'm doing a bit of research on this at the moment about how it can happen, a vision of teaching children from 3 about soil science, because it is so absolutely fascinating. For example, in a handful of soil, there are more microbiota than there are people on the planet. That's 9 billion in a handful of soil. Now, with the help of microscopes, of course, because the vast majority are invisible, I find it fascinating. I know that children will find it fascinating, seeing these tiny, tiny little things actually moving, but you can't see them, but they're actually moving, and they're doing important work, you know. And I think soil science could be made to be a wonderful subject. From 3-year-olds at that level, increase the level each year, right up to year 12 they should do soil science. Because mycorrhiza, that I'm studying a bit at the moment, fungi, it's just unbelievable what I've been reading, how they actually work with each other, work with the roots of plants to get the minerals into the plants. And even if you have a leaf that looks as if it's got fungi on it, as we do in some things, curly leaf, that fungi was put there by another type of bacteria. They've worked with another type of bacteria to get that fungi there. So bacteria work together with fungi, and fungi work with the roots of plants. And in fact, there's a lovely diagram, and it shows there are 47 trees, but here's the major tree, the big father tree, okay? And that mother tree, prepare to call it, is linked to the other 47 trees with mycorrhiza. They're all linked together. And they help to feed each other, they help to grow each other. If they get sick, they help each other out with better bacteria or whatever they need. And so I'm only just beginning, you know, and I'm reading that book.
I know a group in Melbourne actually called the Scale Free Network. They do art projects. Have you come across them? Oh, they're lovely. It's a couple, a scientist and an artist, and they have microscopes, and they get the kids in white jackets, and then they look at water or soil under microscopes, and then they make drawings and imagery based on what they can see through the microscope. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, it's a really great project.
Now, Eliza, I am curious about you as an artist and how this seed library and all these plants are such a fundamental part of your art practice. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself as an artist?
Yeah, I make sculpture, and I make sculpture out of cardboard. And how I came to that was, well, 1, because there's a lot of it around, and 2, because it's rubbish, and I wanted to think about what we value, and I wanted to challenge what we value and try and get people to make some reassessment about where value lies and also where beauty lies. Cardboard is not a very beautiful thing, so I was kind of making the point that what is beautiful is what we lavish our attention on, and we can create beauty through our creativity and through the time we spend, and just through kind of like loving something. So those were the things I was thinking about. So I started making plant forms. They're kind of abstracted, but they're based on plant forms. And the connection there was that cardboard used to be a tree. So my kind of notion there was that cardboard remembers being a plant, and it wants to reform into these organic shapes. So I started building these sort of large abstract cardboard plant forms that I was thinking of as the kind of ghosts of plants that used to be, or like the fossils or something. And so then I started looking a lot at seeds and plant shapes, because I'm quite new to gardening. This garden I have here is the first garden I've ever had. So for me, I had taken it very much for granted. You know, I would just walk past this green stuff, flowers, nice, whatever, you know, but I never really looked as closely as you can look and saw the variety of forms, the complexity of forms, the intricacy. So that was really such an eye-opener for me, and so fascinating as a sculptor to work out formally how to construct those things, because the shapes are all hollow, so they're like shells. So I'm doing some kind of complicated patterning that makes these shapes
Structurally.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. And so when I'm thinking about the seeds, or how this kind of links conceptually for me with the seeds, is to do with aesthetics, is to do with beauty and value. So these seeds are tiny, tiny little things, and so easily lost or not noticed or dispersed. It's like that notion of lavishing attention on something or giving something your full attention. You have to gather them and find them and know what you're looking for. The other thing you have to do is you have to leave them on this plant until the plant has matured to a certain stage, and that often is quite sort of raggedy and ugly looking, but of course that's when that's when the seed is mature, and that's when, so you have to wait for it. So there's all these notions that to me seem to tie in with the things that I'm making, with appreciating very, very tiny things, noticing very, very tiny things, understanding that very, very tiny things are very, very important, and then giving them to other people to learn all those same things, to feel that same kind of enchantment and excitement. Because it's actually terribly exciting that you sort of sprinkle this dust on the ground and you water it, and whoa,
Things grow.
yeah, it's an extraordinary miracle that we just take for granted because it just happens all the time. But actually, when you're the person who's made it happen, crikey, that's just fantastic. So yeah, I love everything about it, and just kind of as well aesthetically, they are so beautiful and varied and so clever. The ways that they have evolved to move themselves around, wind-borne or sticking on your fur, or just the clever things that they can do to get themselves around the place. Plants, they're static, but you find them here, there and everywhere in the garden. So there's clever stuff going on,
like winged seeds with wings.
I know,
heck yeah,
extraordinary. Yeah,
they just go in the wind,
and those kind of physics is just really there's so much to learn.
That's huge. And the thing I'm worrying about with fitting this into a junior curriculum is, what do you replace, what do you leave out, in a curriculum to fit in this sort of information, which is basic. But even half an hour a week.
But also, I feel like our schools these days are very oriented to sitting at a desk and doing something still. And children are not designed to be still. Humanity is not designed to be still. We're designed to move all the time. And I think getting kids out into a garden is A, teaching them how to feed themselves, and B, helping them move their bodies, gain confidence, all that stuff.
I do a lot of work with kids in workshops where we make things, making sculpture, and I know that you learn through your hands. It's this connection from your brain to your hands that is the fastest way of learning anything. So there's all kinds of stuff that kids are learning when they're just using their hands and using their brains and having fun.
But also, imagine your biology classes at school. Instead of learning on a whiteboard or a blackboard, you're actually in the garden, and your teacher has just taught you all about cell structure in a plant, or how microcilium works under the soil. And then you're in the garden and you're holding it and you're planting something. And you've got a project that spans a whole year, so you see the full cycle. And maths, you can You can count things, you can expand things, you can chart things on a graph. You know, there's all sorts of ways you could build it in curriculum.
Yeah.
With the
really
Stephanie Alexander program was wonderful from that point of view. Children cooking. I remember one mother at one primary school here telling me how she said, "Oh, we need an egg," and 3 or 4 kids said, "I'll go and get the egg." So they go out and pick the eggs from the chook pen, you know, and they come in and use it. But they're weighing things and they're following recipes or making up recipes, so it's really just uses so many of their talents, develops so many new talents for them, you know. It's just, and the learning experience sticks much better when you've actually used your hands, you know, doesn't it?
Yeah. I was just going to say one thing about a really lovely, because I answer the emails, I got a really lovely email just recently from this chap. Not got a clue who he is. Quite often when I've sent out the monthly email, then I get a little flurry of emails back just telling me stuff. And one guy said, "I got some pink poppies from the Seed Library and they're the showstopper in my garden, and everyone comments on them." And it was just a really lovely short email where it was just, I just felt, yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Oh, and that on that topic, I should just say, because vegetables was our starting point, but because I have bees, I really felt, and I read a really great article that Grace sent me about loss of biodiversity. So I thought to myself, and somebody randomly gave us a whole load of hollyhock seeds, and we don't usually take flower seeds, but like I was saying before, you don't know what you're going to get. It's a very serendipitous moment to go and find out what people have left. Hollyhock seeds, masses of hollyhock seeds. Somebody's favourite plants, hollyhocks. And so I thought we've got to push the hollyhocks, and people have got to get more biodiversity in the gardens in terms of insect and pollinators. And because we've recently had bees, I have just started growing flowers. Oh my God, what a world. And that's really blown my mind. So I thought I would make a special display of hollyhocks, because there's really great sculptural kind of structural plants. So I made a cardboard hollyhock and put it in the library, and made it at the base of it. I made little segments that you could put all the seeds in, and those seeds have been going. Every time I go in there, it's completely empty. So every time, about twice a week, there's 30 seeds in there, and they're gone. And then we've done mixed annuals, sunflowers, hollyhocks, and the flowers have been ridiculously popular. So, which is just fantastic, because of course pollinators, the little insect life is so reduced, decimated at the moment. We really have to just watch out for the little critters.
Yeah, we have to build up that population to have a more balanced ecology of plants, and it's much better for the plants anyway to have those companion plants.
Yeah, it does
from
help.
From the point of view of health, you know.
Yep. And then it goes sort of all the way up the food chain. If there's less for the birds to eat, there's less birds. If there's less birds, there's less, blah, blah, blah. We all know how it's all so interconnected.
The future of seed libraries in Australia. Well, we're very keen. We've helped other groups get going. A volunteer from Wood End came and sat in one of our Thursday working bees, and she went back and got a few people together and started a seed library there. So there's a few more have come as a result of what's happened here. And we have considered setting up an organisation and doing things to help other people set up libraries.
Some information, But there's heaps to do and places to go.
Yeah.
I always think about, Grace had this great idea about having a National Seed Day, because I can just think of all the educational or all the art ways of talking, using, working, drawing, making, just kind of really focusing in on seeds in lots of different ways. The cooking connection is really obvious, but then there's other ways to engage with it, because they're really fascinating.
Would you like to comment on the importance of a project like this in terms of our changing climate?
Yes. Well, already the climate change has had an enormous effect on growing food and wine and so on in Victoria. I know that even as long as about 10 years ago, Brown Brothers up north bought land in Tasmania because some of their grapevines would not grow in the warming climate. That's just one example. But we're finding, for example, more and more people have to put up shade cloth in the summer to protect their tomatoes mainly and basil and things.
And we've got fruit fly now.
Yeah, we have fruit fly. And all of these are really connected to climate change and global heating. Fruit fly, usually was not known in Victoria because people were stopped from bringing fruit into the state. And so we rarely had outbreaks, but now we've got it.
And it was too cold, as far as I understood that it was too cold before.
Yeah, that is right. But now you see fruit fly is quite common around here, and so even in Newstead in our garden we have to put up fruit fly traps each year and what have you. But not just that, I think more diseases and what have you that live in warmer climates, slightly warmer climates. Fish, as you probably know, are moving. Some fish are found in Tasmania now that have never been found before. They used to come from northern New South Wales. They lived up there, but they're moving down because the water's getting too warm up there, and so they've moved to Tasmania. Now, all Australians can't move to Tasmania, so we have to work out other means of doing that. And so if we grow local seeds, local food from locally produced seeds, each year they will become adapted to a warming climate. Yeah. And so we should be able to continue to grow them here year after year after year for a long time. Now, do you want to add to that?
I was just going to say keeping them circulating, because of course they're alive. So to keep planting them, keeping them viable is not keeping them in, because we can't store them in optimum conditions. They are alive. So to keep them in the ground, growing, and then that's what creates the adaptability, isn't it?
Yes,
that they're
they adapt.
Yeah.
And so that we will reach the stage where seeds bought from northern New South Wales, perhaps, or Queensland, won't grow down here.
Yeah, I think local food systems is so where we want to be going. I know that other people will have spoken to you about seasonability, and this is what growing your own veg does, is it educates you about the seasonal nature of what you can grow, and that's going to change your food, that's going to change your eating habits.
Yeah, definitely. About 25% of people in the UK, I read recently, have 7 meals that they eat for each day of the week, and they eat them every Monday. They have this, every Friday they have fish, and they don't have a wide range of foods in those things. I've worked out that I personally need to eat 40 different foods a week, not including herbs and spices and so on. 40 different foods a week.
For gut health.
For gut health.
I've read about this as well, yeah.
Part of the research I'm doing at the moment, I'm looking at soils. This is why I'm doing the soil thing, to work out, for example, there's 114 elements in the periodic table. I found out that there's 83 of those in soil. I think every one of them is in the soil, even gold and titanium and all that stuff is in the soil. Okay, so if you grow food in that soil with a wide range of vitamins in it, minerals, that food will have a wide range of minerals, will have those 83 minerals in them. And if you eat a wide range of those foods, you're likely to get more of those 83 minerals, which you need for your body.
Yes.
For each organ to function. Your heart needs calcium and phosphorus, for example, to keep the heart pump going and things like that. And so if you eat a narrowed thing, this is why I believe people are chronically ill. We are increasingly becoming unhealthy because we don't eat a wide range of vegetables.
From healthy soil.
From healthy soil, that's the important bit, Ali, yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and the more of those you can grow at home, of course, the better it is still, because it's organic and it hasn't travelled.
Yeah.
And it's fresh. You can go and pick it and cook it,
Yeah, I like that as well from an experimental point of view, that it's easy to make an experiment. When you're picking up a seed pack from the library, you can go, oh, amaranth, I'll give that a go. Whereas if you saw that in a seed catalogue, you might be like, I don't know if I've got room for that in my garden because I don't know what it is and I don't know what to do with it. So it can encourage people to be more experimental and adventurous.
That was Grace McCaughy and Eliza Jane Gilchrist, and I hope you've enjoyed today's show all about the Castlemaine Seed Library. Don't forget that there are links to many of the things discussed in the show notes on the podcast and at saltgrasspodcast.com. For those of you listening on Main FM or 3MDR, just remember that you can listen to all episodes of Saltgrass on your preferred podcasting app. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube. Please subscribe to our email list to get reminders and updates about the show. Again, you can do that by going to saltgrasspodcast.com. This program was made possible with support from Main FM and the Community Broadcasting Foundation. Find out more at cbf.org.au. My name is Alison Hanley. Thanks for listening.
Salt of the earth. Salt. Grassroots. Salt of the earth people. Grassroots change.
Saltgrass. Listen to all episodes of Saltgrass on your podcast app or at saltgrasspodcast.com.